Hello everyone. Our topic this week was requested by Ducky36F. We'll be going over Flemeth from the Dragon Age franchise. Spoilers for all things Dragon Age.
Okay, so Flemeth appears, however briefly, in almost every form of media in the Dragon Age franchise, though not necessarily every individual story. She appears in all 3 games, makes minor appearances in some of the books, and is at least referenced in some of the comics. She is a powerful and ancient witch/demigod, and is arguably the oldest, wisest, and most cunning character we, the audience, have been exposed to date. In her current incarnation, she is a being who was once human that has since fused with the remnants of a dead elven god and become something else entirely. For chronology's sake, we're going to start with the story of the god, followed by the story of the human, and finally go into how the two became one.
The Dalish and their predecessors, the Ancient Elves, worshipped a pantheon of deities called the Evanuris. We learn in Dragon Age Inquisition's Trespasser DLC that the Evanuris were not, in fact, gods, but were simply mortal elven mages with power on an order of magnitude well beyond anything we see from mages in the modern day. However, with a few minor exceptions, all that survives of the Evanuris' stories in the modern day are the legends attributing godhood to them. Mythal was one of the Evanuris, and it is her spirit that would eventually come to comprise half of Flemeth's being. We're going to go over the basic story of Mythal's legend. Just keep in mind that as legends, these tales are likely at least partially exaggerated. That being said, with the taste we the audience have been given of the heights of ancient elven magic and power, it is entirely possible that these legends are more grounded in reality than we realize. It is probably safe to say that Mythal's origin story is made up, but beyond that, theoretically, none of her specific stories are too wildly far-fetched based upon what we've seen.
So, like most religious pantheons, the Evanuris have a king and queen, mother and father figure. Mythal is the mother/queen figure for the Evanuris, a patron of motherhood and motherly love, hailed as the All-Mother and Protector. She is also the second god to appear in the pantheon, preceded only by her partner/presumed husband, the Evanuris king figure, elgar'nan. As such, her first surviving legend takes place early in the annals of the world's creation. Her eventual husband, elgar'nan, was the only child of the earth and the sun themselves. When the sun scorched the earth dry, killing all life upon it, elgar'nan flew into a rage, overthrew his father, and buried him in a chasm in the earth, which opened when she was wounded by the sun. However, the earth counseled that life could not grow again without the sun's light. Despite this, elgar'nan refused to free his father. Time passed in darkness, and Mythal arose from the seas, which had formed from the earth's tears in response to all that grew upon it being destroyed. Mythal calmed elgar'nan, helping him to see that his anger had blinded him to what needed to be done, and so, at Mythal's urging, elgar'nan freed his father from his prison on condition that the sun's rays would be gentler and that he would return to rest in the earth at night. Afterward, Mythal took the white-hot glowing embers of the earth where the sun rested and formed the moon, so that a pale reflection of the sun's light would still shine in the darkness of night.
So, since the Evanuris were theoretically mortal, this whole scenario likely didn't happen. At least, not literally. If there's a real story that these events are based upon, theoretically, it has become so steeped in allegory that we could only guess at the truth of the original events. But the rest of Mythal's tales are much more straightforward and believable. The Evanuris consist of 9 total gods, counting Mythal and elgar'nan. Of the remaining 7, various legends depict either 4 or 5 of them being Mythal's children by elgar'nan, with the remaining 3 to 4 either being raised from mortality or having more nebulous origins. When it came to ruling the rest of the elves, Mythal at some point took on the role of judge and adjudicator. elgar'nan had the job first, but his anger burned like his father the sun, destroying all that he judged, so eventually the job was given to Mythal. She would hear the cases, judge fairly, and if suits were brought against those who had done no wrong, or vengeance was sought over justice, she punished the offenders, leaning on elgar'nan for implementation of his wrath when needed. Most of her stories involve peacekeeping. One story tells that when 2 of the Evanuris had an argument that threatened to evolve into war, both between themselves and their followers, Mythal suggested instead that they settle the matter in a duel fought by a champion chosen by each god, thus limiting bloodshed while mollifying all parties.
Another legend tells of one of the Evanuris slowly growing mad after continuously hunting creatures from the void, being corrupted by both the void and the creatures within. When this god became a danger to herself and the people, Mythal took the form of a great serpent. It's inferred many or all of the Evanuris had the power to shapeshift into dragons or serpents, but Mythal specifically had a lot of draconic iconography, and Flemeth routinely takes the form of a powerful dragon as well. After defeating the other god in a fierce battle, Mythal stole her knowledge of how to find the Void, the inference being that the other god was cleansed of the Void's corruption in the process and would be unable to return and risk further madness. In another story, one of the gods sought war against the surrounding lands and even other gods to expand his power and gain more followers. Mythal rallied the rest of the Evanuris, fought all the way to his temple, and beat him into submission before he finally surrendered to them. There are also references to Mythal killing one or more titans, basically the dwarven gods, though details on that are extremely fuzzy.
According to legend, Mythal's story ends with the rest of the Evanuris, with Solus erecting the veil and locking all the gods away into the Fade, the land of dreams and the source of all magic. Prior to this event, it's inferred that the Fade and the waking world were one. In contrast, according to Solus himself, he actually erected the veil and cast all of the rest of the gods into the Fade in response to what he considered to be the unpardonable sin of killing Mythal. We have little information on the whats or the whys of this. We know that, according to Solus, the other gods, he makes no distinction, so presumably all of them, slew Mythal. We know from speaking to an ancient priest of Mythal that those responsible for her death also destroyed her temples. But beyond that, we don't know how she died or why the rest of the gods, sans Solus, turned on her. It's also worth noting that our only primary source on this subject, Solus, is clearly and unapologetically biased in Mythal's favor, so even if we got an answer out of him, it'd be wise to take it with a grain of salt. Whether or not any of Mythal's legends are based in fact, we know in general terms that the truth of the Evanuris as a whole was somewhat more mundane than the legends make them out to be. According to Solus, there was a terrible war. The Evanuris were generals in that war and led the people to victory. We have no idea who this war was fought against, though Elvish legend speaks of the Forgotten Gods, which are specifically enemies to the Evanuris, making them likely candidates. After the war, the elves came to revere the Evanuris as kings and queens, and over time, that reverence transcended into worshipping the Evanuris as gods.
A spark of Mythal's soul survived her murder. Seemingly unable to reconstitute in full, but hiding Voldemort style and limping around Thedas for millennia until she found Flemeth, hundreds of years before the time of the games. Like Mythal herself, Flemeth is old enough that there are several stories about her origin. She has her own version of the story as well, but true to her nature, she warns the player that even that story isn't necessarily true. Flemeth is all about approaching things with an open but wary mind. According to popular legend, in times past, a noble named Conabar married Flemeth and the two lived happily for a time, until a poet named Osin arrived in their lands and stole Flemeth's heart. The two fled into the Korcari wilds to live among the marshlands there and escape the wrath of Flemeth's jilted husband, Conabar. Time passed, and they received word that Conabar was dying and wished to see Flemeth to reconcile before he died. This turned out to be a ploy to lure the lovers back into Conabar's reach. He killed Osin and imprisoned Flemeth alone in the highest tower at his disposal. In grief and rage, Flemeth called upon the spirits of the Fade to wreak vengeance upon her husband for killing her lover. A spirit answered, possessing her and granting her the powers of an abomination. She slaughtered Conabar, his men, and fled back into the Korcari wilds, where she has lived for hundreds of years, stealing men from their local tribes to sire equally monstrous daughters, powerful, horrific creatures. Sometime later, Flemeth is said to have led an army of marshlanders against their neighbors, only to be rebuffed by a local folk hero.
For her part, Flemeth tells a different tale. In her version, Flemeth was married to Osin, but they were a poor peasant couple. Lord Conabar offered Osin a sizable sum to take Flemeth for his own, but when Osin agreed, Conabar murdered him instead. Flemeth did indeed summon spirits for vengeance and fled into the wilds. Somewhere in that process, in her grief, rage, and having been utterly betrayed, presumably twice over, first for knowing her husband was going to sell her off, and second for knowing the guy that tried to buy her killed her husband instead, a spirit responded to her call for power and vengeance. The spark of Mythal. Finding a kindred spirit in the form of a woman betrayed by both the world and her family, Mythal seemingly offered Flemeth power and knowledge in exchange for helping Mythal seek her own vengeance, as Mythal knew the Evanuris were far from dead. The two agreed and became one, something neither truly elven nor truly human. By her own words, Flemeth is neither Mythal nor Flemeth anymore, but something of both, 1 + 1 equaling 4. By her own admission, she is also, quote, a shadow in the sun, inferring she is not nearly what she once was. Even so, she is immensely powerful, acting as a high-level mage with unparalleled shapeshifting capacity, though she prefers the form of a dragon for combat. Her most dangerous talents, though, are her cunning, as well as her seemingly borderline oracle levels of foresight. She makes a comment in one of the games saying,
"Is it fate or chance? I can never decide,"
in response to meeting the player character. Through this, we can assume she can't actually see the future, or at least not reliably, but through some combination of intelligence and millennia of experience, she often seems to be able to, piercing to the hearts of those she encounters with seemingly infallible intuition and doling out cryptic but accurate portents of the future are common pastimes for her.
We know little of Flemeth's overall goals, but we do know that she intends to seek vengeance for the wrongs visited upon Mythal millennia ago, preparing for a reckoning that will, quote, shake the very heavens. We also know that she travels the length and breadth of Thedas, appearing in numerous stories as the wizened old sage that imparts aid to the heroes at just the right time. She's never entirely benevolent, but she's usually helpful in a mother bird who kicks the chick out of the nest, assuming it will fly kind of way. She saves the player from certain death near the beginning of the first 2 Dragon Age games, for example, and provides the player with information and resources essential to defeating the big bad in the 3rd game. Specifically, in Dragon Age Origins, Game 1, when the player is stuck in a tower about to be overrun by Darkspawn, Flemeth swoops in as a giant owl and flies them to safety, later convincing the player to take her daughter Morrigan with them to aid them on their quest. Deeper into the game, Morrigan learns some half-truths about Flemeth that mistakenly lead her to believe that Flemeth raises daughters only to steal their bodies so that she can continue living forever. It's revealed in the 3rd game that however this process works, it requires that the daughter is willing, meaning that Morrigan was never in any danger. However, in Game 1, not knowing this, Morrigan enlists the player's aid in killing Flemeth. The player can choose to either slay Flemeth and bring Morrigan her book of magic as proof of the deed, or to have Flemeth give you the book while lying about killing her. But either way, Flemeth survives, because it's revealed in Dragon Age 2 that Flemeth had given a piece of her soul to the 2nd game's protagonist prior to the fight with the 1st game's protagonist, as the 2 games run semi-parallel to each other near the beginning. Meaning that even if you kill Flemeth in Game 1, she's reborn later in Game 2, no matter what happens to Flemeth in this confrontation.
Along a similar thread, prior to sending Morrigan with the Game 1 protagonist, Flemeth taught Morrigan a special ritual. In Game 1, you play a Grey Warden. Long story short, they are the only people capable of ending a blight, because they are the only people capable of killing an archdemon. A blight is a massive army of monsters called Darkspawn that also corrupts the land and the people and is led by an archdemon. A blight will only end when an archdemon is truly defeated, and normally when an archdemon is killed, it just respawns from the nearest Darkspawn. It is revealed late game that Grey Wardens can permakill archdemons by ensuring that the archdemon's soul transfers to the Grey Warden instead of a nearby Darkspawn, but that the process is always fatal for the Warden in question. The ritual Flemeth taught Morrigan redirects the archdemon's soul into a nearby unborn baby, granting it the powerful old god soul of the archdemon, but without the corruption of the Darkspawn. Morrigan offers this ritual to the player character, pointing out that it would save the player's life. If the player takes her up on the offer, Morrigan conceives a child with one of the wardens in the party, and when the archdemon is killed, her unborn son gains the old god's soul. In Dragon Age 2, Flemeth saves the Game 2 protagonist from being slain by a small army of Darkspawn and offers to guide the player to safety in exchange for transporting that aforementioned shard of her soul to a place where it can be released, bringing her back to life if she died. The player agrees, and if you take it to the ritual site, she appears, regardless of whether or not you killed her in Game 1, revealing that she is not limited to being in a single place at a time, and foreshadowing the events of the 2nd game and the player's importance in them.
In Inquisition, the Game 3 protagonist meets Morrigan, and the 2 eventually seek out an ancient temple of Mythal, not knowing that Flemeth is Mythal. In the heart of the temple, either the player or Morrigan will be given the opportunity to drink from a mystical well holding the memories of eons of Mythal's priests, gaining tremendous knowledge but binding them to Mythal's will as well. No matter who drinks from the well, Flemeth is contacted, the surprise of her identity is revealed, and Flemeth offers key aid to help defeat the big bad. Additionally, if Morrigan had the old god baby through the ritual, Flemeth takes the power of the old god's soul from Morrigan's son, leaving him simply a normal boy. In the aftermath of the base game, Flemeth and Solus, old friends, share a brief conversation, both clearly fully aware of what's about to happen, with Flemeth chiding Solus for essentially creating the entire problem you spend the game fixing, while Solus apologizes both for that and for the fact that he needed her power to finish his plans. Flemeth then allows Solus to seemingly absorb her soul and power, presumably returning Solus to full-powered Evanuris status and setting off the events of the Trespasser DLC. Despite her seeming death, though, the smart money is on Flemeth still being alive. She's seen fiddling with energy that looks much like the soul energy we see transfer between she, Solus, and Morrigan's son just before Solus kills her. What's more, the passion she displays when admitting that she must have revenge for Mythal's murder was far too great for her to simply allow herself to die. But even putting that aside, she's already shown she has the ability and forethought to plan contingencies for events like these. so this wouldn't be the first time she's cheated death.
Well, what have we here?
And that's basically Flemeth, Queen of the Evanuris in the Dragon Age franchise. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like and share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for lore videos you'd like to see in the future, do like Ducky36F and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more lore videos from us, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and if you'd like to see our Let's Plays, follow the link in the description and subscribe to our Let's Play channel.
In the meantime, this has been
True Masters and Morons, signing off.